love me violets, violets, love me violets.
A tiny flower with a mighty history, symbol of Athens, the cradle of democracy, an emblem of Napoleon's acolytes, who wore the flower to show their allegiance to the banished emperor. Sweet and shy, the violet is a key perfume note, with mysterious qualities and a scent that's delighted, baffled, and confused perfume lovers. Wherever it grows, the sweet violet has been treasured for its perfume and as a symbol. Let's have a closer look at this remarkable flower. The history of the violet flower is rich with stories from Greek mythology. Ion, the legendary founder of Athens, was crowned there. According to legend, Ion was leading his people to Attica and was welcomed by water nymphs who gave him violets to signify their good wishes. Ion became the name for violet in ancient Greek, and Athens became known as the city of the violet crown. There are in fact a great many references to violets in Greek mythology. There's even a legend involving Venus beating maidens until they were blue and turned into violets. In truth, the origins of Athens' connections to violets are lost in the mists of time. In Christian law, violets sprung from Mary's tears and appeared at the Annunciation, symbolizing humility. Violets also signify mourning, modesty, faithfulness, and even political loyalty, as seen with Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon, who was exiled on the island of Elba, confided to his partisans that he would return to France with the appearance of the violets in spring. The British writer Helen Maria Williams was in Paris when Napoleon arrived. She wrote, "That lovely and earliest flower of spring, the symbol of timid beauty and the soft harbinger of summer, had been transformed into the badge of the sanguinary faction." The military, who were initiated in the secret of Bonaparte's intended return in the spring, had applied to him the nickname of La Perle Violette. On the morning of the 21st of March 1815, the triumphant violet appeared glaring in the buttonhole of every Bonapartist coat, or stuck into his hat, with all the ostentation of an order or a cockade. Violets became a symbol of the love between Napoleon and Josephine. For her coronation in 1804, Napoleon commissioned the court perfumer François Rancé to create a perfume for his wife. Rancé developed a scent which he named Josephine. The fragrance, which became a sensation, combined the scent of Josephine's two favourite flowers, rose and violet. Here is a bottle of Pauline from the house of Rancé, named for Napoleon's favourite sister rather than Josephine, which I bought in Milan a few years ago. The modern Josephine has become a flowery oriental, so I chose Pauline because it has a delicious combination of violet and rose with a subtle patchouli note. Perhaps this scent from G.F. Trumper, Ajaccio violet, is another memory of Napoleon's favourite flower, since he was born in the Corsican city of Ajaccio. Violet sellers who sold sweetly scented bunches of violet flowers were part of London life for many years. Violets became a Victorian obsession. They were Queen Victoria's favourite flower. As the obsession for violet spread, it was reported that one lady, arrested for theft, said she would rather go to prison than hand back her violet perfume. The old centre of violet growing in England was near Stratford-upon-Avon, where from the late 1700s onwards, syrup of violets was produced for the chemical industry as a test for acidity, rather like litmus paper. Through the 19th century, violet growing expanded to many areas outside London, chiefly in Middlesex. The Gardener's Chronicle from November 1880 noted that all through Middlesex in market gardens, violets are blooming freely now. Then something happened, and the crops began to decline, possibly because of a deteriorating air quality. Interestingly, the same sulphur that was to reduce the violet crops killed the fungal diseases of roses, black spot, rust and mildew, which became more prevalent as the air became cleaner. By 1902, some growers claimed they could no longer grow violets for market. In southern France, violets became an important crop, and Toulouse is still a centre of violet growing today. Here are some examples of Berdoux's Violettes de Toulouse, a fragrance with a long history that's said to contain extract of violet petals. It's a good, simple, true violet scent. The perfume of the flowers was extracted by enfleurage, whereby the blooms are pressed into soft wax or oils. Several applications of flowers are made, and then the oil is processed with alcohol to produce a pomade. The alcohol is evaporated until a concentrated violet absolute is produced. The process is laborious, affected by variability, and very costly. Some flowers, such as lily of the valley and lilac, are unsuitable for the process. Then in 1893, a major development in the history of perfumery occurred when two German scientists, Kruger and Teermann, who were analyzing the scent of orris root, which is close to violet scent, discovered the chemical composition of the root's perfume. They patented their discovery as ionone, after the aforementioned ion, the ancient Greek for violet. Iolanthe was the Greek word for violet flower. Ionones reduced the cost of violet scents greatly and led to many new violet soliflor perfumes, which became extremely popular. Roger and Gallet was the first company to combine synthetically made ionones with natural violet leaf extract with their Vera Violette in 1892. Here is a bottle of Vera Violette, or True Violet. I'm not sure how old it is, but the bottle is the original type. Here is another early Roger and Gallet, an Extract Violette de Palme. I've had this open and the violet's still distinct. Here's another old bottle, Prices of London's Triple Extract of Violette de Palme. It still has its silk seals. Bossari is an Italian perfumery house established by Barber Ludovico Bossari in 1897 in Parma. The first fragrance was Violetta de Parma, originally created by monks for the Duchess of Parma Marie-Louise, the second wife of Napoleon Bonaparte. She loved violet flowers and supported research at the monastery of the Annunziata, where a violet extract was produced. Ludovico Bossari obtained the formula for his perfume in around 1870. Here are several Bossari scents, which use a natural extract. As so often with violet scents, the packaging is very pretty. The scent of sweet violets, Violet odorata, is dominated by the ionones alpha-ionone, beta-ionone, and methyl-ionone. They are what characterize the sweet floral powdery velvety scent of violets. You could just as well say that sweet violet flowers smell of ionones as the ionones smell of violet flowers. They're not an unrelated material that coincidentally smell of violets. This is important because you'll hear talk of synthetic cheap violet scents. Ionones may be synthesized, but they are the same true scent of violet flowers. In fact, you're very unlikely to smell violets in a scent unless synthetic ionones are present. Ionones have a very strange and confusing quality. They affect the olfactory receptors, inhibiting them after initially stimulating them, and this takes away the sense of smell. So violet can make you temporarily anosmic. After looking into the subject, the plot began to thicken, because apparently up to 50% of people cannot smell beta-ionone. Small differences in the genetics of nasal receptors cause very significant differences in the odor perception of beta-ionone. Some individuals are 100 times less sensitive to it, and at higher concentrations perceive a pungent sour vinegar odor instead. I wonder if this is why some people detect pickles when they smell Santal 33. Here is a collection within a collection. A great many violet perfumes. The good, the pretty good, and the ones that don't actually smell of violets. After years of collecting violet fragrances, you also find you've acquired several violet-related artifacts. Violet ink from Paris, an old porcelain violet on a pin, books. This old one has lovely prints, some violet-flavored liqueur. I always have these palmet violets and sometimes violet creams. My interest in violets turned to growing some scented violets in my garden, with mixed results. Here are a few pictures of them. I did okay with some cultivars, but I couldn't keep tender Parma violets like Duchesse de Parma and Palme de Toulouse for more than a couple of years. Both of these Parma violets had a lovely and powerful scent, rather like Berdu's Violette de Toulouse. Out of curiosity, I recently got a couple of violet perfume bases from the company Freighterworks. This one is called Bois de Violette, and this one is Violette Bleu. As these are perfume bases, they're highly concentrated and not meant to go directly onto the skin. The scent of each develops after a minute or two and is very interesting, strongly violety and rather different in character. They're another way of enjoying distinctive violet smells. Everybody knows what violet smells like, don't they? Well, I've more than a dozen fragrances that are called violet that don't smell of violet flowers at all. How can a perfume called Violet Blossom not smell of violet flowers? Isn't it a little disappointing that Elizabeth Taylor's Violet Eyes perfume contains no violet at all? I delight in the true scent of violet flowers, but I've discovered that the perfect violet fragrance is as elusive as the flower itself. I've many violets that I love, but even now I'm not sure I've ever found the perfect one. It's a question of blending and taste. Violet is a flower, a smell, a colour, and also a flavour. I first became aware of violets through a lady who worked for my dad. He had a business in King's Cross in London in the 1960s, and the lady who did all my father's bookkeeping and answered the phone would buy half a pound of violet cashews and half a pound of rose cashews from a sweet shop round the corner. She would roll down the paper bags and continually eat the scented, powdery little ovals as she went about her work, chatting to me as she had the occasional task of babysitting. The scent and flavour of the cashews fascinated me, and I soon developed a taste for the violets in particular. Later I would discover Parma violet sweets like these, which I still have today. In fact, these Parma violet sweets are an excellent example of the violet scent, because they too are flavoured with ionones. The unique and fine scent of violets is floral, sweet, woody, fruity and powdery. As with all perfume ingredients and notes, admixing is required to build a proper scent. Violet notes are everywhere in perfumery, and they always seem to me, at least, a welcome addition. However, in fragrances that are predominantly violet, I sometimes find some combinations unsatisfactory or even ruinous. This is where balance is key. Here is Serge Lutens' Bois de Violette, which came from the gorgeous shop in the Palais Royal. The box and the bottle are like all things Serge Lutens, very beautiful. The scent itself is very classy. But for me, the cedar has overly subdued the violet. My desire for more violet flowers possibly marked me out as a Philistine, but I'm still very glad to have this perfume. Here is an example of how violet can lift a fragrance out of the doldrums. This is Iris de Nuit from Healy. It's a very chic quality iris that is given buoyancy and cheer by the addition of violet. There is something delightful about the weirdness of iris, and the violet blends perfectly here. I wear this myself sometimes. Here is a wonderful and unusual fragrance, Balenciaga's Le 10, created in 1947. The interesting thing about this scent is how a pronounced and gorgeous violet note is built around a classically French composition of florals and aldehydes. I've seen Le 10 described as Chanel No. 5 with violets. There is much confusion over the use of violet to describe violet leaf, a very different note. Although the green scent of violet leaves blends well and is often used with the scent of the petals, they're not at all the same thing. Violet leaf extracts are made from violet odorata plants. The note is green but more aged than fresh. It's a profound and dark note that's herbaceous. I do also detect a whisper of floral iris violet. The odor is created using solvents and concentrated to produce an absolute. In 1903, Charles Moreau and R. Delange discovered the violet leaf molecule methylheptene carbonate. The material is powerfully green and vegetable. Violet leaf absolute is expensive, so MHC became a very popular way to add depth and class to the violet flower. I've read that some perfumers considered that no violet scent was complete without the earthiness of the leaf. I imagine they were thinking of the effect of a bunch of violet flowers sold with the leaves around them. However, to me, there's sometimes too much leaf and not enough flower. MHC was effectively banned because it can occasionally cause irritation. Actually, this was a great loss, as it led to the reformulation of Dior's Fahrenheit. This great men's scent never recovered from having its heart ripped out, so that even 90s bottles no longer have the astonishing rush of petrol, hawthorn and violet green that dominated nightclubs at the end of the 80s. Why didn't I save the bottles that I had knocking around from that period? Here is some violet leaf extract, and here another from this scent training kit made by Le Labo, which they called an olfactionary. It came out nearly 20 years ago. It was a gift and I should have used it more, because the 40 perfume notes are pretty good. Since I keep the metal box refrigerated and there is little air in the bottles, the contents are still in excellent shape. The violet leaf extract is amazingly like some of the old violet perfumes that I have in my collection. This Disney-esque little box is Devon Violets from Yardley and dates from the 50s or early 60s. The small bottle contains a parfum which is very like the Le Labo leaf extract. Le Labo is a curious brand. I've never quite managed to find a scent of theirs that I wanted. Their most popular scent, Santal 33, has a sort of violet element, along with a number of rather strange notes, but it seems to me lacking in form and distinctiveness. I suppose it's all a matter of taste. Sometimes the violet note is elusive, but what about disappearing from the bottle completely? Yardley is interesting for violet lovers because from 1913 onwards they produced a good inexpensive scent, April Violets. Here are several bottles from the 60s to the 90s and noughties. This wonderfully coloured brew is the best. a simple but distinct violet floral with a spicy note. I have at least 4 bottles, but they'd not be much use in an emergency, so I don't know why I'm hoarding. This one is from about 15 years ago and is still a great violet. I used to use these as a room scent, and I've gone through dozens of bottles. And then this happened, a reformulation from 2015. Not only is there no violet, the new scent is very annoying, with a tang of fruity sweeties. Why call it April violets? Why not be honest and call it cheap sweets that refuse to die? The whole thing is baffling. This is not a case of anosmia. The latest April violets never smells like violets, no matter how often you go back to it. Although the scent of violet flowers is a favourite, it's not as sophisticated a note as, for example, the related note of iris. Violet needs company and likes company. It blends very well, but I find that a number of other notes can clash with violets, to the point of being annoying. I love the combination of violet and roses. They're made for each other. The violet takes the grandeur of roses and freshens them to make them more powdery rather than dusty. My favourite violet rose is Lipstick Rose by Frederic Malle. It's just about perfect. Then there's Yves Saint Laurent's Paris, voluptuous, heavenly and fruity. The Eau de Parfum is much better than the EDT. Another divine violet rose is Drôle de Rose from Artisan Parfumer. All these are airy and almost edible. I like Chanel's Mesia too, another violet rose, but there's something in it that's very slightly jarring, probably the lychee or peach notes, but you might like it more than the others. Now I want to look at a few favourite violet fragrances. In my view, the truest, most honest violet fragrance is Penhaligon's Violetta. I have a few bottles and boxes here. What's unique about the scent is the balance and potency. There's violet leaf, geranium and some musk and woods, but the radiant centre of the perfume is the powdery violet flower. The notes combine to give structure to the scent, but it's the violet that shines through as clear as a bell. I've never worn this scent alone, but I like to smell it or add it to make a violet layer. Once upon a time, Penhaligon supplied excellent soliflores like night-scented stock and orange blossom. Today they make a great many expensive iterations. Sadly, Violetta was discontinued several years ago. Penhaligon make a sort of violet scent, the favourite, but it has a rather disturbing peony note, which to me is not altogether pleasant. Violetta's sorely missed. Here are a couple of versions of Caron's Violette Précieuse. They've been producing a version of this fragrance since 1913, when it was created by Ernest Daltroff. Sadly, I don't have a sample of the original, but the most recent version from 2018 has violet flowers, iris, musk, lily of the valley, sandalwood and raspberry. Incidentally, raspberries contain ionones themselves. This is the parfum strength. The opening is odd. It reminds me of a chemistry set I had as a child, but this fades quickly to a lovely, airy, fresh violet, with lots of violet flower and iris. It's a little like white linen with a heavy dose of violet iris. These bottles come from about 25 years ago, and they're pretty similar, but after the chemistry set, the violet and iris are blended with a heavier dose of white flowers. I just checked the Caron website, and it looks like Violet Précieuse has been discontinued again, but you can still get Aimez Moi, Love Me. This is a bottle from the 2000s. I like this one. It has interesting notes of mint, anise, florals, fruits, amber, and plenty of violet. Lastly, here's the violet I've been wearing for the last few years, Parco Palladiano 9 Violetta from Bottega Veneta. This is a modern violet which came out in 2017. It was created by Sidonie Lancesseur. The Parco Palladiano range was inspired by plants and flowers. I took to this one immediately. The combination of violet with a very clean musk is wonderful. There's a little powderiness and woodiness, but really the appeal is a wonderful breezy, airy quality, suffused with a gentle but persistent violet. I find it tremendously fresh and appealing. Sadly, this has been discontinued for a second time, which means I'm having to limit my use. I'm down to my last bottle, and I need to find something else. Since so many of the scents I've mentioned are no longer available, I thought I should recommend a few violet or violet-toned scents that are still around. Grey Flannel from Geoffrey Beene is a good violet fougere, masculine but dandyish. There's a good dose of violet and an interesting mineral note. Another great violet, Annick Goutal's La Violette, a proper violet. It's fruity and rosy. This is a joyful violet with a candid feel. Let's not forget Guerlain's Le Bleu and Après L'Onde. Both contain hearts of violet. Then there's the gigantic insolence, which is like a violet perfume merry-go-round. But we'll talk about that fragrance more another time. Guerlain used to make a powdery pretty violet, meteorites. Here's a bottle from 20 years ago. Violet scent is sometimes fleeting, but it's remarkable how often violet scents appear on the market and are gone before you can say gamma-methyl-ionone. Such a beautiful flower, pretty and discreet. It's a thing so lovely that it needs no further embellishment. Shakespeare said, to gild refined gold, to paint the lily, to throw a perfume on the violet. Miraculously, the sweet violet does carry a heartbreaking unique aroma. In perfumery, violet notes are sometimes compared to minor chords in music, especially when compared with, for example, the major chord of the rose note. But the violet is no less for that. As the English philosopher Bernard Williams said, we may pass violets looking for roses, we may pass contentment looking for victory.